Do I look okay? No. Hello and welcome back, friends, to my I'm in my 30s now thing that I'm doing, and not very well. My name is Hannah, I am the Woman in Wool, and this is my channel. I have had a mess of a time these past probably like 2 months now with hard drives and filming and all of this stupid stuff, so I am so sorry. But the good news is that all of my messiness and tornado capabilities, tendencies, are being rewarded because now it is spooky season and it's the most wonderful time of the year. We all know this, we all love this. If you know me, no you don't, please don't bring this up, I'm so embarrassed in real life all the time, it's not even funny. If you know me in real life, you know that I am very much a basic bitch, right? I like colorful leaves, I like pumpkins, I like pumpkin spice, I like apple cider, I like fall things. You can take the girl out of America, you know? So imagine my absolute delight when I found out that seasons in Ireland start a month earlier, and therefore I get fall a month in advance. Pumpkin spice crack to us white girls from America. So I am here to talk today a little bit about the seasons, and then we're gonna meld into something I think is a lot more on topic and a lot more seasonally appropriate, because honestly, this is the best news ever, and it gives content for me a whole different spice, and I absolutely love it. Okay, so in this video, just to let you know, I'm going to be talking a lot about calendars and how they have been measured over time and how they've been built out quite a bit. So just as kind of a precursor, the calendar that we learned in school and the one that we're all used to is called the Gregorian calendar. It was founded in 1582 by Pope Gregory XIII, and eventually it entirely replaced its predecessor, the Julian calendar. Why did I say that so weird? Julian calendar. Because Julius Caesar, who created the Julian calendar, miscalculated the length of the year by 11 minutes. And that is crazy to me, that 11 minutes can add up so much that the calendar eventually falls out of sync. Like 11 minutes every year for hundreds of years. Probably still not that much. Comment down below the math on that. But the reason Ireland is in a different cycle than most of the world is not because of the weather or anything, obviously. The reason it's in a different cycle is because of something called the Celtic calendar. Culturally, Ireland follows this Celtic calendar. Of course, on the day-to-day and during business, they use the Gregorian calendar just like anybody else. But it's a cultural practice to maintain the Celtic calendar in terms of celebrations and other various events, and just to keep that history alive. And to be honest, the concept of using two calendars, one for cultural events and one for a cultural maintenance practice, kind of reminded me of the Hebrew calendar as well. So on my mom's side, I do have Jewish ancestry. And I made it kind of my business to learn as much about it as possible when I was younger. But for those of you who don't know, if you've ever had a Jewish friend, or if you yourself are of Jewish descent, you'll notice that the holy days like Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, or even Hanukkah don't fall on the same days in the Gregorian calendar every year. If you were to ask somebody, oh, when's Hanukkah? You'll get an answer kind of like, oh, well, this year it's blank to blank, or it uses a different calendar, so it's different every year. This is the same concept kind of as the Celtic calendar, using two different calendars, but of course, specifically it is different than the Celtic calendar. The Celtic calendar very much follows a closer match to the Gregorian calendar than the Hebrew calendar was. But just culturally, it definitely reminded me of that growing up as a kid, and having one calendar just for holidays and one calendar for literally everything else. It kind of reminded me a little bit of that. Hopping back to the Celtic calendar, what's interesting is that since the Celts were not a monolith, they weren't just one group of people, they were spread out all over Western Europe. The concept that they use the same timekeeping method is probably not 1000% accurate. There are, of course, a lot of similarities, same as like the variety of the Celtic languages. Check out my video on that. But however, in this study, Archaeological Footprints of the Celtic Calendar, it dives into the idea that, and I'll quote this, "We show that, although there may be common aspects that connect all Celtic sites and areas, there was no common calendar as such. although there are solid indications of a usage of a shared time reckoning system. I had to retake that like 3 times. I couldn't say that. So I will be referring to the Celtic calendar as such here just by saying the Celtic calendar, but know that when I say that, it's in reference to the mainly Irish use of the Celtic calendar and how it has evolved into the modern Celtic calendar today. The Celtic calendar is pre-Christian, meaning that before 400 AD, this was the primary method for timekeeping in Celtic Ireland. The calendar year began on November 1st, and this new year was marked with a festival called Samhain, which you might have heard of. It's spelled Samhain because, of course it is. The thing about Samhain is that it is one of many season change festivals that have gone on in the Celtic year. For example, Samhain is the market to winter, which to us folks from 2022 will seem different because November 1st is still, to us, mid to late fall. So the Celtic calendar is as follows. Winter is November, December, January. Spring is February, March, April. Summer is May, June, July. And autumn is August, September, October. Petition linked down below to start the pumpkin spice latte in August in the country of Ireland. Now, we've talked about Samhain, but of course there are plenty more fun aspects to the Celtic calendar, other festivals marking season changes, like Imbolg, which is the start of spring, or Bealtaine, to mark the start of summer. I've heard it pronounced Beltana, Bealtaine, Bealtaine. You might have heard some of these festivals going around like Witch Talk and Witchstagram because they're kind of pre-Christian, pagan-esque festivals that celebrate the earth and life around it and life around us rather than a Christian deity. Just be aware that they will have been pronounced wrong at some point. So it's not Imbolc or Beltane. It is Imbolg and Beltana or Bealtaine or Bealtaine. Comment down below which one I've messed up. But the reason these are so exciting and get around Instagram and TikTok and social media is because they are kind of mysterious. Ireland's past is Celtic and pagan, giving them a link to a more nature-based spirituality, and also a fair amount of mystery, and gets people who are humans and looking for a more natural-based form of spirituality. As far as I know, the people who created this calendar system did not consider themselves witches, but I think by today's standards, they would have at least liked witch talk. So what does that mean for us today? Well, it means that Samhain is coming up. At the end of autumn, it's a festival that mixes the shortening of days, and also something else that is very exciting. So Samhain, get ready for this, is the original Halloween. It is the precursor to today's Halloween, and you know, I could make a whole video about that, but absolutely I'm going to be doing that right now today. This is the video. Get excited. Samhain is Halloween. Halloween is Irish, just like St. Patrick's Day, if not more so. Don't at me or prove it. I don't know, whatever. I'm just very excited. So as we discussed, it is the New Year's celebration from October 31st into November 1st, the celebration of the start of winter, the shortening of days, but it's also a Celtic celebration of kind of the interchanging of worlds. The Celts built incredible structures that were specifically built for the season change holidays in mind. While you might have heard of Newgrange, a Neolithic passage tomb that has windows and openings that allow sunlight to flood inside on each solstice, the Mound of Hostages does the same thing on Samhain. The ingenuity and the astral awareness that these people had to have had thousands of years ago is just incredible. To build a hollowed mound of dirt and rocks that only fills up once a year on their New Year's holiday, what a religious homage to that, right? Like what an important thing this must have been for them to have gone through the complicated mathematics and the excitement just to be able to do that. Now, this New Year's celebration would typically involve bonfires where people would gather together in the warmth of the fire and take branches and bring them home to light their own hearths. In a pre-Christian Irish winter, I'd say that was very much necessary. Thank you for the fire. I'll be taking that now. Burning branches would be placed around the area as well to help spirits find their way. And this is kind of what I was talking about with the interchanging of worlds. Because, as you guessed, on the night of Samhain, the veils between the worlds, or the divides between the worlds, would be at their thinnest. The world of humans, the world of fairies, and the world of the dead would often meet on this night and sometimes cause trouble. And it's easy to see where we get the superstitious and spooky part of Halloween with this stuff. Alright, sorry that the framing is different. I had to plug in my camera because technology is hard. Now, it's easy to see where we get the superstitious and kind of spooky elements to Halloween that we are so used to and love so much, because this is originally kind of where it came from. divides between the worlds, the dead visiting the living. You might also be thinking that there are lots of examples of this as well in different cultures, the most obvious one being Dia de los Muertos in Mexico, and those are also kind of at the same time of year, the warm going into the cold, closing in on the winteriest, coldest, harshest months when the dead would visit you. Maybe it's to give comfort, maybe it's because people realized that the world was changing around them and that death was everywhere in nature. I'm not sure, and I'd have to look into more about the connections between potentially Samhain, Dia de los Muertos, and more Halloween celebrations around the world. But that's something that fascinates me, is that as the world starts to die in the winter, people start to celebrate death and celebrate dead loved ones in their life. And that's, I think, perfectly natural. And it's just a beautiful thing to see. The Irish festival, however, might be where most Americans get their idea of Halloween. You see, during Samhain, as the years went on and Ireland developed into the Ireland we know today, the traditions surrounding the celebrations of Samhain continued. These practices, I think you'll find very familiar. The people of Celtic Ireland had them as far back as they can remember, or as far back as they can see written down. They would dress up in animal skins in ancient Ireland and try and scare away the spirits. Later on in the centuries, this practice changed with the introduction to Christianity from the UK and Ireland. When Samhain went from what it was to an All Souls Day or an All Saints Day in the Christian monikers, eventually this would translate to All Hallows Day or All Hallows Eve, as then it would be translated and mispronounced into All Hallows Eve or All Hallows Day to Halloween. These traditions were kept up for this holiday to keep people more comfortable with converting. You could keep your holidays and your traditions that you love while still celebrating the new God that you're learning to love. They started to call the practice of dressing up and walking around the neighborhood souling. And this was a practice where poorer children would go door to door now and offering prayer for the souls of the richer folks' dead relatives in exchange for a seasonal treat called a soul cake. This practice was also called guising, and in England it was done during Christmas time as well. As you can probably tell, this is the precursor to my old favorite holiday celebration for Halloween, trick-or-treating. Free candy as a child, literally cannot get any better than that. So during the early 20th century, with the Irish population increasing in the States and the revival of Celtic cultural interest in Ireland, the holiday of Samhain and all of its activities started to peak in the States as a result. However, Halloween also became kind of an excuse to cause mischief in the name of the spirits. I assume it was in the name of the spirits, just a day to cause mischief, and mostly property damage type mischief, not the fun whoopee cushion type mischief, like breaking car windows and stuff type mischief. Trick or treat. So who came on board to try to save the spooky day? Candy, costumes, capitalism, my friends. America took Samhain and made it into these cutesy pumpkin spooky vampire costume parties you see today. And that was a direct result of capitalism, trying to get money off of costumes, marketing it towards children in order to get the mischief out of Halloween, offering candy for going door to door and trick-or-treating rather than soul cakes or songs. This transformed the whole day from something that was a little bit feared and a little bit misunderstood to a day that everybody looked forward to. It was almost non-religious in a way because it was so old. It came from a Samhain holiday, an ancient Celtic holiday, that these people could do it without feeling like they were doing anything weird or wrong. Speaking of the pumpkin craze, nobody was speaking about the pumpkin craze, Hannah. You're alone in a room. You know what a jack-o'-lantern is. Of course you do. It is the icon of the holiday, a hollowed out pumpkin carved into a fun face shape or some sort of spooky design. Sometimes they're adorable and sometimes they're terrifying. That is also Irish. A big part of Halloween is from this very much Irish tradition of jack-o'-lanterns. Now, I did feature this on my Instagram page, but I'll retell it again here because I'm very excited about talking about it. So get ready for a story because you're in for a good one. I am going to read this off, and I will add some pictures as well as the project that I made today. I'm sorry I didn't introduce that, but I did make a garland for my mirror because I thought it was very cute, so I'll give you a little bit of a montage of that with some things that I did as well as some pictures of the story that I'm about to tell. So get ready for some confusing images and to listen to the sultry sounds of my American accent. For this origin story, I need to tell you an Irish folk tale of a man named Jack. A man who didn't care about anything or anyone except getting drunk and serving himself. He was a manipulative man with a self-serving attitude, and actually his name was Stingy Jack because of how mysterious and cheap he could be. but unfortunately he was also pretty clever. He lived in the Irish countryside centuries ago, according to legend. He was so notorious that the devil himself had heard of his evil deeds and silver tongue, and he had to take a look at who was stealing his thunder. So off he went to find Stingy Jack and to take him to hell, of course. Upon stumbling home from the pub, the devil met Jack and told him he was coming with him to the afterlife. Not easily fooled, however, Jack convinced the devil to have one last drink with him, to which the devil agreed. Our mischievous friend went to pay the bartender after the drink and said to the devil that he had no money, and that the devil should turn himself into a coin to pay the pub, and the devil agreed, since he could just turn back at any time. Jack, however, took this coin that was the devil and popped him into his pocket next to his silver cross. The devil was stuck there until he agreed to give Jack more time on earth. A few years later, Jack was met with Satan again, and this time the devil was angrier. And he found himself grabbing one last fruit from a nearby tree. Jack said, "Please, devil, please, can I just have one last fruit from this apple tree?" Once again, the devil agreed. He climbed up the tree to pick the apple for Jack, and once the devil was in the tree, Jack drew himself across on the bark with his knife, and again the devil was stuck in the tree by a cross until Jack was promised one more time to have some more time, and to never take him to hell. So the devil promised he would never take him to hell. When Jack's time finally did come to die, he left his body and was met with two options. Heaven couldn't let him in because of his terrible deeds, and he was banned from hell with his own words. He was forced to wander the earth as a spirit, with nothing to guide his way but the light of a lantern made from a hollowed-out turnip. And on Samhain, when the spirit worlds collide with ours, these turnips help Jack find where to go. So as the tale kind of shows, Jack of the Lantern, he was called after that, would hold on to these turnips that were hollowed out with little candles inside them and guide his way around, or follow the turnip lanterns around Ireland and around the human realm until he was able to guide himself back home, which he would never get to because he wasn't allowed in either realm. But as the Irish moved to the States and as traditions surrounding Samhain continued and grew, the jack-o'-lanterns, as they were called in Ireland, moved from turnips onto a more seasonal vegetable. They were carving out turnips, and as the Irish came over, they realized turnips weren't as common as these new bright, orange, beautiful, hollow vegetables called pumpkins were. And if you scooped out the meat of the pumpkin, you could eat it, and then you could carve a bigger face. It was a little bit easier, and they were everywhere this time of year, so why not? So the jack-o'-lanterns went from turnips to pumpkins in America, which I'd like to think starts that kind of pumpkin spice craze, that kind of pumpkin-y obsession that specifically Americans have this time of year, because pumpkins are in season. They're a staple of the holiday, and they remind us of our nostalgia as children, walking around with some really cute jack-o'-lanterns to see. I mean, it's better than a turnip spice latte, I guess, but that's an opinion. That is kind of what I have prepared in relation to how Ireland has kind of fostered the modern day Halloween. There are so many more. I could go into every single fairy that has spawned a Halloween character, like the Dullahan, the Banshee, and how those have kind of spun off into Halloween characters, both of which I think you can see on the screen are related to how we picture potentially the Headless Horseman, witches, and banshees of today. So thank you so much for joining me, folks. I am so obsessed with the fact that Samhain is Halloween. I have been spouting it the entire time I've been here. As soon as I found that out, I was absolutely floored, and it became my entire personality. But I'm so excited to be back. I have been an absolute train wreck these past 2 months. Surprise, surprise. I hope you enjoyed those little stories, and I hope you enjoyed my leaf garland. Yeah, I think it turned out really, really cute and kind of fall-y and autumny and pretty. So I'm pretty proud of it. It's just a bit of a little project to get me through the week. I appreciate you being here. Follow me on Instagram and TikTok right now. Oh my God, please. And I'm happy to see you again, hopefully in the next 2 weeks, bar any more technical disasters. Knock on wood. Holy shit. Anyway, thanks. Mwah. I'll see you next week. And thanks for tuning in. But scrolling, and therefore I get a month. I'll get a month more fall. Still not very good at knowing as much as possible, but, you know, doing my best to make the other Jews proud, I guess. We show that although there may be such common aspects, although there are solid indications of the usage of a shide, although there are solid indications of the usage of a stock. But of course, with the calendar changes, August to November is the winter. So you may have heard some of these festival talk. I'm gonna plug this in. Oh my god. Later on in this century, later on